These are the hardcore facts going against the Trinity doctrine. When Trinitarians are saying that God is one being, three persons, they are not telling you the truth. Because when you go back to the Apostolic Fathers, the Ante-Nicene Fathers, they were teaching a different Trinity. They were saying that the three persons were also three beings. And so there is a huge contradiction between the Apostolic Ante-Nicene Fathers and the modern Trinitarians. And what this contradiction does, it destroys the Trinity doctrine, because if the Trinity is three persons but also three beings, then the modern Trinitarians are totally wrong. And in fact, that proves that there are three gods, not one. Again, I ask you, is the Trinity three persons or three beings? You have to come to terms with this and know that the ones who started the Trinity doctrine in the church were teaching that God was three beings, three persons, three beings. To them it was the same thing. But modern Trinitarians such as Dr. James White, and now we have this Huff brother teaching all these things that are contrary to the Word of God and to history. Now we're dealing with history. Modern Trinitarians are totally in disagreement with the Apostolic and Ante-Nicene Fathers. Who was right? Who was wrong? I'm telling you, both of them are wrong, and they contradict each other. And if the three persons are three beings, then you have to accept that there are three gods. This fact really bothers me. For a long time, I've been telling Protestant Christians that if they follow up and keep defending the Trinity doctrine, it's going to hit them in the face. And that is starting to happen already, because Catholic bishops are saying Christian Protestants who claim the Trinity doctrine are not sola scriptura. And they say, because we developed the doctrine of the Trinity, the church did. And now Protestants are claiming the Trinity also, but they're saying it's a biblical doctrine. But in reality, Catholics are saying, and they admit, it is not a biblical doctrine. It is a philosophical doctrine that they developed throughout the time. You can see it in the Catechism of the Catholic Church that they relied on the Apostolic and Ante-Nicene Fathers and what they taught and wrote about the Trinity, so that they could also teach on the Trinity. So yes, it is wrong that Protestants are saying that the Trinity is biblical when Catholics know it isn't, and they do not believe in sola scriptura, and they developed it. And so now Protestants are looking dumb in trying to defend something that the Catholic Church brought into the community. When Trinitarians talk about Genesis 1:26, one of their favorite verses, they claim that let us make man in our image is God speaking to the two other parts of the Trinity, or the Trinity. But here's the thing, Genesis 1:26, when you go and with context and go to Genesis chapter 2, you will find the actual creation where God creates Adam and Eve. And is there a Trinity there? There is no Trinity. It is just one God creating humans. So it is a total false teaching to say that Genesis 1:26 is speaking about a Trinity. Deuteronomy 6:4 is a very powerful verse that teaches that God is one Lord. And so Trinitarians have tried to go around this by saying that, well, the verse doesn't really mean that, and the word echad means a unit, a combination, a family, but it does not mean one God. But this goes totally wrong against the chapters before that. Chapter 4, chapter 5, and then 6, they speak about one God who spoke from heaven to the Jews. And God is reminding them of all these things. So the context is saying that God is one and there is no one else beside him. So when Trinitarians attack, or really when they disfigure Deuteronomy 6:4, they are totally wrong in doing this. Now Jesus taught in Mark chapter 12, they asked him, what is the first commandment or the greatest commandment? And Jesus said, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. And then he said, you shall love the Lord with all your heart, and on and on. You see, Trinitarians, when they talk about the first commandment, they always say, you shall love the Lord with all your heart. That's how they start, because in Matthew, it has it that way. But in Mark, the full teaching of Jesus is that God is our one God, one Lord. And so Jesus affirmed the Shema of Israel. And so Trinitarians have a big problem here, because the Pharisee that was questioning Jesus said, you have done well in answering this question, because you are right. There's only one God, and only He created all things. And so He builds up on the oneness of God. And that shows you how powerful it is. Deuteronomy 6:4 and then Mark chapter 12. Now, please listen carefully. John 1:1, the logos of John 1:1 is not about a Greek philosopher in very many years before, Heraclitus or Plato or Philo. It is not about what they were teaching, because John was not a Greek philosopher. What he was teaching was a simple word. Logos is a simple word that is found in the New Testament 200 times or more. And the word simply means spoken word, utterance, and so forth. So John was teaching Genesis chapter 1 that God created all things by His word, His utterance, His speech. That's all John was saying. He was not teaching the Greek philosophy and the logos of Philo of Alexandria. That is a lie. Is the word Trinity in the Bible? No. What about one God, one being, three persons? No. What about persons? Does God refer to God being three persons at all, anywhere in the Bible, in the Godhead? No. What about the co-equal and co-eternal beings? Not in the Bible. And I can go on and on and on. The definitions used by Trinitarians today to prove a Trinity, especially the Athanasian Creed, which is a forgery. All that is written there is a bunch of mumbo jumbo. None of that is found in the Bible. Catholics would not apologize for that, because they're Greek philosophers. But Protestants who claim to be biblical are totally wrong in trying to prove the Trinity and saying that it is a biblical doctrine when it never was. How many God divine persons will we see in heaven? In other words, how many thrones will we see in heaven for the Godhead? The answer, only one throne. And I ask that you seek this out, study it carefully. Why is there only one throne in heaven for God? The reason is very simple, very clear, and a powerful fact against the Trinity doctrine. There's only one God who sits on the throne. Yes, the Lamb sits on the throne also, but the Lamb is the manifestation of God. God manifested in the flesh. The Lamb is the sacrifice that brought us to God. So that's why the Bible and Revelation teaches that God is on His throne, and the Lamb is sitting on that same throne, because they're one and the same. When it was introduced into the church, there was conflict. If you look at the 2nd century, 3rd century, 4th century, and on, there's always been conflict since the Trinity was introduced. You see, the early church did not teach a Trinity. The Jesus and the apostles never taught a Trinity. No one in the Bible did. But in the 2nd century and onward, it was introduced into the church communities. And there was strife and divisions ever since. And the worst part of it is that the stronger group started persecuting the others, and not only persecuting but killing them, burning them at the stake, and so forth. The Trinity is marked with the blood of the martyrs. So the Trinity has a big persecution on its head, because it persecuted believers. Now, why would so-called Christians persecute others, and even to the point of murder? Why would they do this if the Trinity is a biblical doctrine, if it is a true doctrine? Why would they have to persecute and kill people? The reason because it was rejected. It was unacceptable to true believers. They did not want anything to do with the Trinity of three persons, three beings, and three gods. And so persecution makes a huge statement about the Trinity being a false doctrine.